Merci et bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être.
Dairy farmers around the world, World Milk Day. Today is the ideal time to reflect both on the celebration of supply management in Canada, but also on the hard times that our fellow farmers from around the world are facing. With global milk prices hitting record lows, many farmers in countries that have deregulated are struggling to make ends meet, and many others have gone out of business. This has forced governments in other jurisdictions, all of whom were eager to join the free market, to step in to ensure the survival of their domestic dairy production. Over the last year, farmers in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand have been calling for help because they see no future for their farms or their families. Global prices are so low that even the largest farms, the most efficient and best farm managers, cannot profitably produce milk. In Canada, although our situation is not perfect, we are very fortunate to have supply management. It has sheltered us from most of the global storm, allowing us to continue to produce high-quality milk with a reasonable expectation that efficient farmers are able to cover their costs of production. The Canadian government, and all major political parties for that matter, have repeatedly stated their support for supply management, and for very good reason. The current global dairy situation is another strong indicator that Canada's supply management system works. It is because we plan our production in advance to meet domestic requirements, we have producer pricing, and we have controlled imports that we are not experiencing the market supply, that oversupply that is causing the global prices to plummet. In Canada, we face difficulties too, but our situation is better thanks to supply management. Our farmers are, however, affected by a lack of government action on enforcing Canada's domestic regulations and border measures. As a partner in our regulated marketing system, the government must play a role to achieve a better, more sustainable future for our industry. The dairy industry in Canada is a major contributor to the Canadian economy. 215,000 full-time, well-paying jobs across the country. $18.9 billion a year to Canada's gross domestic product. And $3.6 billion per year in taxes paid to the different levels of government throughout the country. Canada needs dairy farmers. Canada needs supply management. There are a number of issues that must be addressed to strengthen our industry and to ensure its long-term sustainability. The government is well aware of these issues, but the time has come for them to take action, and the time is now. The government has a responsibility to mitigate and compensate the impact of the concessions made in the CETA and TPP negotiations, to apply domestic regulations such as the cheese standards, to exclude supply-managed goods from the duty relief program and put them in the right place, the import for re-export program, to invest in the dairy sector infrastructure, such as our aging processing capacity, and we've got great ideas for stimulus funding, and to be more transparent when it comes to CBSA advanced rulings. Many of these issues are not new. We have been dealing with issues like duty relief and diafiltered milk as examples for the past 5 years. On May 2nd and 3rd, the government committed to meeting with the dairy industry within 30 days to begin to work out a framework for the CETA compensation package and to arrive at a sustainable long-term solution for the diafiltered milk issue. On May 18th, we met Minister McCauley on both of these issues. While some progress was made on the framework for a CETA compensation package, the diafiltered milk issue is still outstanding, and the 30-day deadline for diafiltered milk expires on June 3rd. And to this point, no sustainable solution has been announced. World Milk Day is an opportunity for perspective It's a chance for us to look at our Canadian supply management system within a global context. It allows us both to contrast our system with what is happening around the rest of the world, and also to highlight some of the things that the government needs to do to ensure that what is happening in the rest of the world never happens here in Canada. Tomorrow, farmer representatives from every province across Canada will gather on Parliament Hill to remind the government that the Canadian dairy sector is important to Canada, that the government has a role to play to ensure a long-term sustainable industry. Each of the issues we've outlined are equally important to the preservation of our system. We farmers have always done our part. The government must stand together with us now and take action because Canadian milk matters to all of us. I hope to see you all tomorrow on the Hill. Thank you.
Merci. Je voudrais vous dire un mot concernant.
I would just like to say a word concerning the last direct attack against supply management. Firstly, I find it deplorable that some people are imperiling the survival of dairy farmers who are devoted and just for political gain. The dairy sector is a key economic contributor to Canada. This dynamic sector is important to our rural communities. The facts are clear. Supply management works in Canada. But surprisingly, some people are still doubting the situation on the basis of wrong data. In our case, we're sticking to the facts. But dairy farmers now know that some people are ready to say just anything because it's an election campaign time. People change their stance depending on their needs and their audiences. I would like to say two things on the dairy situation in Australia, which is often quoted in terms of deregulation. In reality, the dairy situation has deteriorated terribly in Australia over the last few years, and everything indicates that in Europe, the situation will be detrimental to the dairy sector. Recently, the Australian Deputy Prime Minister announced support measures to the tune of over $570 million to support dairy farmers in Australia. And dairy production and the number of farms have dropped, and farm prices have dropped. And so this doesn't show that the Australian model is as great as some people think. We're always available to discuss the benefits of supply management. We're always ready to discuss the facts. Last summer, Canadians told us that 91% of Canadians told us that it is important to them that Canadian milk be Canadian-made. And the buy local movement is stronger in Canada than the desire to pay less for the products. So it's important that Canadians understand that Canadians are proud of what we produce in Canada.
Guillaume St. Pierre, QMI. Go ahead. We're taking questions now. Do you have a question?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Did I ask for it? I'm sorry.
Okay. First question. Alex Benke.
On the dye-filtered issue, have you talked to the Border Services Agency? I think that's where the problem is, right? The way they interpret the rules. Have you had any meetings with them?
We did have several meetings with all departments involved, because as you know, there's a different department involved when it's a question of the border issue. But again, with dye-filtered milk, we've mentioned several times that the situation lies in the fact that the product entering the country is qualified under one tariff line and avoiding tariff and quota, and becomes in the country another type of product for the composition of a product. So there's a discrepancy between two situations. So it's not only a border issue, it's really a question of enforcing as well our domestic policies. So it's a dual issue.
Next question, Janice McGregor, CBC.
Just to follow up on that, I'm just wondering exactly what you've asked for from the government as far as solving the dye-filtered milk problem, because I've asked them what they're going to do about it, and they just say, well, consult. But what is the concrete solution that sorts this out? Like, does it involve talks with the Americans? Like, how complicated is this? What would the elements of a solution be?
Well, in our mind, we believe that Canada, being a sovereign country, has the ability to enforce its own regulations. This is a domestic issue. This is not a border issue, not a trade issue. This is an issue where Canadian regulations are not upheld. Back in 2008, we had cheese standards that were put into place so that consumers knew exactly what components of products went into their cheese, and there's certain ratios. So it's 83% in cheddar, for example, must be 83% fluid milk, and the rest can be protein product. Those regulations, as Carolyn alluded to, are not being honored because when the CBSA calls this product that comes across the line as an ingredient, and then somehow it magically turns to milk, it's identified as milk, when it lands at the processor, we believe, warps the cheese standards, because then that allows the companies to use the product on the milk side of the ratio. And so all we're asking the government to do is very simple. Just uphold the Canadian regulations. Shouldn't have anything to do with the Americans because it's not a trade issue.
Okay, next question, Guillaume Saint-Pierre, QMI.
Sur le lait diafiltré,
On the dye-filtered milk, you said that the 30 days will be expiring tomorrow. So what has been accomplished so far? Has there been any progress in your discussions?
On ne peut pas répondre pour le gouvernement. C'est-à-dire que vous
You can't answer on behalf of the government. You should put the question to the government, because for us, all we know is that we've had meetings with the government. Has a decision been announced? Has a solution been proposed? So far, no. So right now, as we speak, no solution has been put forward. But you have to remember as well that tomorrow's meeting is meant as an opportunity to remind the government the role it has to play in maintaining the supply management system, because the government also has a role to play in the border protection measures to ensure that trade agreements are properly respected, and that the government's work will ensure that we can know what is coming into Canada in order to determine our own production levels properly as well. So there are several elements involved, and we're discussing those with the government, dye-filtered milk being one of them.
peut-être un petit suivi. Est-ce que
Just a follow-up now. So are you expecting any developments or a meeting in the next few weeks? Well, that's what we hope for, absolutely. As our president just said, these issues have been outstanding for years, just as the problem of the non-collection of duties. These are holes in the system that are impacting our producers, and that has been known for years. As I just said, several departments are involved, and we have to find a way out. Unfortunately, we've been caught short by time, and these issues are still outstanding. But indeed, we do hope that the government will be able to find a way out to ensure that our producers can continue to get the revenue they need to be able to maintain the industry in Canada.
Next question, Marie Vestel.
Oui, bonjour. Vous dites que
Yes, hi. You said that you deplore the fact that politicians are ready to say anything during an election campaign. So are you probably talking about Maxime Bernier's statement yesterday? And is this also a concern that goes as far as the Liberal government? Or you said you were reassured about the free trade agreement with Europe. I just want to make sure who you're talking about. When you said you had a concern with the government, was that in terms of what happened yesterday? No, all parties officially support supply management. There are individuals that seem to have made some remarks or taken a different position in the last few days, but those are individual standpoints. So are you worried that the government might back down? No. In terms of supply management, their commitment is still intact. All we want now is the actions that are required to support that. Because support for supply management has not been questioned. Well, not to us anyway. Quite the reverse. People understand why we need supply management in Canada. But they need to act accordingly. That's what we're really asking them to do now. So the actions that they promised in terms of the free trade agreement with Europe have not been questioned? No. The government planned to compensate farmers, and we're looking for a way to do that.
Just follow on that. So you didn't, you said your meeting on May 18th was an opportunity to discuss with Mr. McCauley the CETA compensation issue. I know you're not there yet, you don't have a done deal yet, but what was he communicating as far as likely timelines for having a package ready? Is this something that will wait for the Implementation Act on the trade deal, or could it be announced earlier than that? And just wondering if you have a sense as to whether they're likely to be creating their own compensation package, a different mechanism than what was on offer from the previous government, or if they're going to stick broadly to kind of what was presented to the industry earlier.
Some of that, I think, is a bit speculative at this point. We were just invited to a meeting to basically consult with the minister and his staff as to what we believe the needs and compensation package would look like for dairy farmers. And so what we did was articulate the losses that are going to be incurred by producers in perpetuity once increased market access starts to be provided to the Europeans. We are certainly, watching very closely, and although it considers to be said that there may be an agreement soon, like this fall, when it comes into force, is still no set date. They're hoping, as far as Minister Freeland has said, sometime in 2017. But as I said, we're in consultations with the government, and we have articulated very clearly the needs and desires of the dairy industry, both when it comes to modernization of processing structure, investment in the industry, and compensation for the asset, basically. Quota is an asset, so, reduced production means reduced quota held on farms, which means that, due to what we consider an expropriation of an asset, it needs to be compensated for.
Where are things on the import permits for the European cheese coming in? Like, have they started even that process yet, or will that be after ratification? You know what I mean? Like, in terms of people understanding the timelines for when they might start to see the new product on shelves here. And
There's just started actually consultation online for TRQ administration. So it's been delayed. They were waiting for the agreement to be finalized with the legal and technical scrubbing. So they are just starting around, I think it was last week, they've put it on the website, consultation on TRQ.
so that's going to take.
It's just starting. It's a consultation that could take, it's hard to say it. I guess it depends on the number of participants. And
If I could just
Sure, go ahead.
follow up on the compensations that you evoked. You said that you communicated your needs to Mr. McCauley. Was there a number to those compensations that you think that producers might need because of these changes coming in with CETA?
We know what our losses are going to be on an annual basis. They accrue on an annual basis. But I don't have those numbers handy in front of me. I think, do you recall what they are?
yeah, there's actually a bracket because it depends of the cheese that will be imported, because as you know, we calculate the revenue in terms of butter fat. So depending of the type of cheese that is imported, that will have an impact. So there's a bracket. And if I remember right, the bracket is 116 million a year. It's 109 to 116 million a year. So that's the bracket in terms of loss of revenue for the cheese import.
Mr. Binkley.
And do you know what that would be per the compensation per producer that you would ask for?
We've asked for, actually, the commitment when the agreement was signed was compensation for loss of revenue. So that's what we're holding the government to. And the loss of revenue is obviously, as the President just mentioned, is at perpetuity, because that's meal that will never be produced.
Yeah, but I mean, like Mr. Joe sitting at home, how much money are you asking for a year per producer average for that bracket?
It depends on their quotas.
Yeah. Every farmer in Canada has different holdings when it comes to the amount of quota they hold, which allows them to produce a certain volume of milk. So it would require a calculation to determine exactly what any farmer would be receiving at any point in time.
But again, it's not a bonus or a gift. It's a compensation for loss of revenue. So it's calculated according to the loss of business that actually will occur on that operation.
And we still don't know whether this is industrial cheese or fine cheese or a little bit of everything. That's part of the consultation, I guess?
No, actually, it's set in the agreement. There's a portion that is fine cheese and a portion that is industrial. So those quantities are known. And obviously, that's the fine cheese that is the biggest part of it, which will be affecting our cheese manufacturer in Canada.
Mr. Binkley?
Do you have a response to Berendier's call for an end to supply management?
Yeah, I understand that there's a leadership contest going on, and it seems to me that certain candidates for leadership in the Conservative Party have decided that they're going to stake out certain positions.
Any more questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.